The desert wind carried whispers of a storm that never came. That's how it always was on Route 89, cutting through the Arizona wasteland like a scar that refused to heal. The sun hung low, bleeding orange and crimson across the horizon, painting the
I
asphalt in
know.
shades of
Lean on
ending
us.
things. And on that road, moving like a dark
Almost there.
prophecy toward the small town of Redemption, 12 motorcycles thundered in perfect formation. At the front, leading the pack like a wolf with his brothers at his back, rode a man the world knew as Reaper. His real name was Nathaniel Dutton. 46 years carved into weathered skin eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too little. The Harley beneath him was a 1985 shovelhead, black chrome and engine growl. The kind of machine that didn't just run it, roared with the ghosts of every mile it had conquered. On the back of his leather jacket, worn smooth by wind and time, 3 words announced who he was to anyone fool enough to look Iron Covenant MC President. Redemption. Chapter. Behind him, 11 riders moved in synchronized silence. Brothers. Not by blood, but by something deeper. Something forged in fire and sealed in loyalty that most men would never understand. They had been riding for 6 hours straight. Phoenix to Redemption. A run they made every month, visiting chapters across the state, keeping the bonds strong, keeping the covenant alive. But today something felt different. Reaper couldn't name it, couldn't place his finger on the unease that crawled up his spine like a cold hand. He just knew. The way a soldier knows when the night is too quiet, the way a sailor knows when the sea is lying. 6:03 p.m., the temperature dropping as the sun gave up its hold on the sky. 17 minutes to redemption. 17 minutes until everything he thought he knew would shatter like glass under a hammer. The formation held tight. Tiny rode directly behind Reaper's left shoulder, 6'5", 340 pounds of muscle and scar tissue, earned in Navy engine rooms and bar fights that became legend. Mad Dog on the right, lean scarred eyes that never stopped scanning for threats, the way they had in Fallujah over 20 years ago. Preacher Wrench Stone, Gage Torch, Diesel Hammer, Knuckles Boone. Each name a story. Each story written in blood and brotherhood. Iron Covenant wasn't a gang. Reaper made that clear to anyone who asked and most who didn't. They weren't criminals playing dress-up in leather. They were men who had served military, most of them. Men who had come home to a country that didn't quite know what to do with them anymore. So they found each other, built something that made sense in a world that increasingly didn't. They ran charity rides for veterans' hospitals, fixed motorcycles for widows who couldn't afford mechanics, taught kids from broken homes how to wrench on engines, how to find purpose in grease and gasoline, and the simple, honest truth of making something broken work again. But they also had rules, lines drawn in concrete. You didn't disrespect the club. You didn't disrespect the brothers. And you absolutely, under no circumstances, touched their families. Derek Calloway had just broken every single one. Betty's Diner sat on the corner of Main and Fifth like it had been there since God laid the first brick of redemption. Red vinyl booths, checkerboard floor, a jukebox in the corner that still played Patsy Cline and Johnny Cash for a quarter. The kind of place where everyone knew your name and half your business before you sat down. Behind the counter, wiping down surfaces that were already clean because her hands needed something to do, stood Betty O'Malley. 68 years old, white hair pulled back in a bun that had gone out of style in 1962 and never came back. She had owned this diner for 43 years, buried 2 husbands, raised 3 kids, and fed every soul in redemption at one point or another. She had sharp eyes, eyes that missed nothing. And right now, those eyes were locked on the young woman working the last booth by the window. Sarah Dutton moved slowly, one hand supporting her lower back, the other balancing 3 plates like she had done 10,000 times before. 8 months pregnant, her belly prominent, under the worn pink waitress uniform, blonde hair pulled into a ponytail that swung as she walked. 33 years old, but looking younger in the fading light through the window. There was a softness to her features, a gentleness that life had tried hard to beat out of her and somehow failed. She smiled at the elderly couple in booth 7 as she set down their chicken fried steak and mashed potatoes. The smile was real. That was the thing about Sarah. She had been through hell, had scars that went soul deep, and still found it in herself to smile at strangers. Betty didn't like it. Didn't like Sarah working this late, this pregnant, this close to her due date. Didn't like the way Sarah winced when she thought no one was looking. Didn't like the shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleep that wouldn't come. "Sarah, honey," Betty called out, her voice carrying that tone that was half suggestion, half order. "Your shift's over. Clock out. Go home." Sarah turned that same gentle smile in place. "Just 20 more minutes, Miss Betty. I've got the tips from table 4, and they're good for at least another round of coffee. Reaper's gonna be home soon. You know how he gets when you're not there. Something flickered across Sarah's face. Not fear, never fear, but something softer. Anticipation mixed with relief. He's still an hour out. I checked my phone. I've got time. Betty wanted to argue. Should have argued. Would spend the rest of her life wishing she had put her foot down, locked the door, sent Sarah home before 6:15 rolled around, and 3 men walked through that door bringing hell with them. But she didn't. She just sighed and went back to wiping counters. Sarah moved to the coffee station, began brewing a fresh pot. As she waited for it to percolate, her hand drifted unconsciously to the silver necklace around her throat. Thin chain, small pendant. If you look close, you could see letters engraved there. KH always remembered. She touched it whenever she was nervous, whenever memories crept too close, whenever she thought about the girl whose initials hung against her heartbeat, Kimberly. 14 years hadn't been enough to dull that particular wound. Sarah suspected 100 wouldn't be either. She pushed the thought away. Focused on the coffee, the simple rhythm of work, the mundane safety of routine. In 20 minutes, she would clock out. Drive home in the little Honda Civic that Reaper had bought her, paid in cash, because he didn't trust banks and didn't believe in debt. She would get home before he did, put her feet up, maybe start dinner. In 20 minutes, her life would still make sense. She glanced at the clock. 6:14, the bell above the door chimed, and 3 men walked in, bringing the smell of whiskey and malice with them. Derek Calloway was 36 years old and had never been told no in his entire privileged life. He stood 6 feet tall, athletic build, running to soft around the middle from too much scotch and too little consequence. Blonde hair, gelled back designer jeans, a polo shirt that cost more than Sarah made in a week. Behind him, his perpetual shadows, Brandon Phillips and Tyler Kern. Bran and Tyler. Interchangeable in their usefulness, identical in their cowardice. They moved to the center booth like they owned it, because in a way they did. Derek's father, Vincent Calloway, was a councilman with his sights set on state senator. Old money, old power, old corruption dressed up in American flag pins and campaign slogans about family values. And Derek was his son, his golden boy, his legacy wrapped in entitlement and sealed with a checkbook that had gotten him out of every mistake he had ever made. Sarah felt her stomach tighten the moment they walked in. Some primal part of her brain screaming, danger, run, get out. But she couldn't, wouldn't. This was her job, her town. She had as much right to be here as anyone. She took a breath, steadied herself, walked over with menus and that smile that took more courage than most people would ever know. Good evening, gentlemen. What can I get you? Derek looked up at her, and for a moment there was nothing in his eyes but the lazy assessment of a predator sizing up prey. Then something shifted. Recognition flickering across his features like a match strike in the dark. He leaned back in this booth smile, spreading slow and cruel. Well, well, he said, voice carrying across the diner. Don't I know you? Sarah's blood went cold. I don't think so, sir. Now what can I— No, no. Derek held up a hand, snapped his fingers like trying to summon a memory. I definitely know you. That face, those eyes. Give me a second. Bran and Tyler exchanged glances, grinning like hyenas scenting blood. Sarah stood frozen, every instinct screaming at her to run, but her feet wouldn't move, couldn't move. Derek's eyes went wide, theatrically wide. Holy shit, I got it. He slapped the table. You're Sarah Hartley. Or wait, what's your name now? You got married, didn't you? Dutton, Sarah whispered. Sarah Dutton. Dutton, Derek laughed, sharp, cruel. Right. You married that biker trash. What's his name, Reaper? He said it like the word tasted funny. Real tough guy, I heard. President of some little motorcycle club. Sarah's hand went into her necklace, gripped it like a lifeline. Derek leaned forward, elbows on the table, and eyes bright with something that might have been excitement if it wasn't so ugly. But that's not why I know you, is it, Sarah? I know you because you're Kimberly Hartley's big sister. The diner went silent. Even the jukebox seemed to hold its breath. Sarah's face drained of color. Please don't. Kimberly Hartley. Derek drew the name out, savored it. Prettiest girl in Redemption back in the day. Head cheerleader, smart as a whip. Had a full ride to Stanford, didn't she? His smile turned into something sharp enough to cut. Before she killed herself. Stop. Sarah's voice cracked. Please. But Derek was just getting started. He stood up, slow, deliberate, took a step toward her. You remember why she killed herself, Sarah? You remember what happened to poor little Kimberly? Tyler and Bran were grinning, watching, enjoying the show. Betty's voice cut through from behind the counter. "Derek Calloway, you sit your ass back down right now, or I'm calling the sheriff." Derek didn't even look at her. His eyes stayed locked on Sarah. "She accused me of something I didn't do, tried to ruin my life with lies. But the truth came out, didn't it? The courts saw through her bullshit. She was just another girl looking for a payday." "That's not true." Sarah's voice barely a whisper, tears starting to form. "You know that's not true." And then 4 months later, she couldn't live with her lies anymore. Took a whole bottle of pills, left a note saying she was sorry. Derek took another step closer, close enough that Sarah could smell the whiskey on his breath. "But she should have been sorry for lying about me, for trying to destroy my family." "Get away from me." Sarah tried to back up, but her legs hit the booth behind her. Derek reached out, fast, grabbed her wrist. "You know what I think, Sarah? I think Kimberly was weak. I think she was always weak. And I think you're weak too, coming back here working in this shithole diner married to some ex-con biker trash. Let go of me. What's the matter? You gonna cry? You gonna run to your husband?" "Oh, wait." Derek's eyes flicked to the clock on the wall. "He's not here. Is he out riding around with his little gang playing tough guy while his pregnant wife serves coffee to real men?" Sarah tried to pull her wrist free. Derek's grip tightened. From the corner booth, Griff Sutherland stood up. 71 years old, back bent from age and old war wounds, but eyes still sharp. "Son, you need to let the lady go." Tyler moved fast, stepped in front of Griff. "Sit down, old man. This doesn't concern you." "The hell it doesn't." Griff tried to move past him. Tyler shoved him. Hard. Griff went down, hit the floor with a sound that made everyone in the diner wince. Lay there for a moment, stunned hand going to his hip, where 30-year-old shrapnel still lived under the skin. Sarah screamed, tried to reach for him. Derek yanked her back. "Where do you think you're going?" Betty was already on the phone. 911, I need police at Betty's Diner, Main and 5th. Derek looked at Sarah, really looked at her. The pregnant belly, the tears streaming down her face, the necklace with her dead sister's initials. And he smiled. "You know what, Sarah, I'm glad Kimberly's dead. World's better off without lying little bitches like her. And I hope your kid turns out just like her, so I can—" Sarah's hand came up. Instinct, self-preservation, trying to push him away. Derek grabbed her other wrist, pulled her close. Close enough that she could see every detail of his face, the cold calculation in his eyes, the enjoyment. "Get off me!" Sarah twisted, tried to break free. Derek let go. Sudden, violent, and shoved her, hard, both hands to her shoulders. Sarah stumbled backward, arms pinwheeling, trying to catch herself. But her center of gravity was all wrong, thrown off by the baby, by the fear, by the pure momentum of Derek's push. Her hip caught the corner of booth 6, the sharp edge, the angle all wrong. She went down hard. Her head hit the metal support of the table, with a sound like a baseball bat hitting a watermelon. Blood immediately, bright red against blonde hair. She crumpled to the floor, one hand instinctively going to her belly, the other to her head. When she pulled it away, her palm was crimson. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Then Betty was screaming into the phone. "I need an ambulance now, pregnant woman, head trauma." Griff was trying to get up, reaching for Sarah. Tyler and Brand stood frozen, suddenly realizing this had gone somewhere they hadn't anticipated. And Derek just stood there, looking down at Sarah crumpled on the floor, blood pooling around her head, tears mixing with the red. He showed no remorse, no fear, just a cold, calculated assessment of the situation. "Oops," he said, voice flat, empty. "Guess you should watch where you're going." Sarah's eyes were open, staring at nothing. She was conscious, but the light behind her eyes was dim fading. Her lips moved, barely a whisper. Kimberly. Baby. Nate. Outside, the sound of thunder. Not from the sky, from the road, 12 engines, 12 Harleys, rolling into redemption like the hand of God coming down to judge. Derek didn't hear it, or if he did, he didn't care. He was already pulling out his phone, already calling his father, already preparing the story. The lie, the version where he was the victim, and Sarah was just clumsy, just an accident, just another problem that money could make disappear. Betty heard it. She looked up from Sarah, looked out the window, and her face went pale. Griff heard it, and despite the pain in his hip, despite being 71 and half broken, he smiled. Because he knew what was coming. Who was coming? The bell above the door had never seemed so loud. Reaper had known something was wrong 3 miles out. The way you know when a storm is coming, even when the sky is clear. The way you know when someone's watching you, even when you can't see them. Instinct, honed by 2 decades in the Navy, refined by 6 years in prison, sharpened to a razor's edge by 22 years leading men who would die for the patch on their back. He throttled down, hand signal. The formation slowed, 11 engines dropping RPMs in perfect synchronization. They rolled into redemption at 6:15, Main Street quiet in the dying light. Everything should have been normal, should have been the same as it always was when they came home from a run. But Reaper saw the ambulance parked outside Betty's diner before they even made the turn onto 5th. His blood went cold. He saw Betty's face in the window, saw her looking at them, saw her mouth form words he couldn't hear but understood in his bones. Sarah. He didn't remember parking the bike, didn't remember the kickstand, the ignition, the walk across the pavement. One second he was riding, the next, he was pushing through the door of the diner, Tiny and Mad Dog flanking him like guardian angels carved from violence and loyalty. The scene unfolded in slow motion. Sarah on the floor, blood, too much blood. Paramedics working on her, one holding gauze to her head, another checking her pulse, a third on the radio calling for backup. Griff on the ground nearby, Tyler standing over him, looking lost. Derek Calloway in the center of it all, phone to his ear, face showing annoyance more than concern, and Sarah's eyes, finding Reaper, locking onto him with an intensity that broke something in his chest. Nate, her voice barely a whisper. They know. About Kimberly. They know. Reaper crossed the distance in 4 strides, dropped to his knees beside her. His hands, scarred, calloused hands that had built engines and thrown punches and held her on their wedding night, hovered over her, afraid to touch, afraid he'd make it worse. I'm here. I got you. His voice rough, catching. The baby. The lead paramedic, a young woman with kind eyes, looked up at him. We need to get her to the hospital. Now. Possible concussion, and we can't assess the baby here. Reaper looked at Sarah's belly, at the swell of life they had created together. The second chance they had both thought they'd never get. Kimberly. They were going to name her. Kimberly. He looked up, saw Derek for the first time. Their eyes met, and in that moment Reaper understood exactly what had happened. Saw it written in Derek's smug indifference, in the way he stood like a man who knew he was untouchable, in the curl of his lip that said he had done this before and gotten away with it and would again. 14 years collapsed into seconds. Reaper was suddenly back there, standing in a different room, looking at a different Hartley girl who had been broken by the same hands. Kimberly, 16 years old, crying so hard she couldn't breathe, telling him what Derek had done, begging him to make it stop. And he had tried. He had done everything right, taken her to the police, filed the report, believed in the system, and watched as the system failed her. Watched as money and power twisted the truth into lies. Watched as Kimberly was crucified in the court of public opinion. Watched as she withered under the weight of disbelief and shame until she couldn't carry it anymore. He had found her, in her bedroom. Empty pill bottle on the nightstand. Note on the pillow, I'm sorry, Sarah, I'm not strong enough. Reaper had stood at her funeral and sworn an oath. Not to God, not to the law, to Kimberly herself. 3 months later, he had found Derek Calloway in a parking lot outside a bar in Tucson. Had beaten him so badly that Derek spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Fractured jaw, broken ribs, concussion, internal bleeding. Reaper had been arrested 3 hours later, charged with aggravated assault. No plea deals, no mercy. 6 years in Florence State Prison. Worth it, every single day. Because for 6 years, Derek Calloway had carried the scars of what happened when you hurt someone Nathaniel Dutton loved. But 6 years was a long time. Long enough for scars to fade, for lessons to be forgotten. Long enough for Derek to think he was safe. Reaper stood, slow, deliberate, every eye in the diner on him. The paramedics loading Sarah onto a gurney, but even they paused, sensing the shift in the air. The way pressure drops before a tornado touches down. Behind him, 11 men arranged themselves. Not blocking the door, not threatening, just there, present, a wall of leather and loyalty. Reaper took one step toward Derek, then another. Derek looked up from his phone, saw Reaper, and for just a flicker of a second, something like fear crossed his face. Then it was gone, replaced by that same smug certainty. Well, well, if it isn't the biker trash himself. Derek pocketed his phone, crossed his arms. Your wife's real clumsy Dutton. You should teach her to watch where she's going. Reaper said nothing, just looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who had raped Kimberly Hartley, who had driven her to suicide, who had just put his hands on Sarah, on the mother of his unborn child. Tiny moved up to Reaper's left shoulder, Mad Dog to his right, the formation tight, controlled, but ready. Derek glanced at them, laughed, nervous energy bleeding through the bravado. "What, you gonna let your gang jump me in a diner in front of witnesses? In front of paramedics?" He looked past Reaper to Betty. "You got cameras in here, right, Betty? You're recording all this." Betty's voice was cold as January. "Oh, I'm recording, Derek. Been recording since you walked in. Got real good footage of you putting your hands on a pregnant woman, shoving her, watching her fall." Derek's smile faltered. "She came at me. I was defending myself. That's not what my camera shows. Your camera can be wrong." Derek pulled his phone back out, started dialing. "My father is Vincent Calloway." Reaper's voice cut through the diner like a blade. Low, controlled, vibrating with fury held in check by willpower alone. "Councilman, running for state senator, man with money and power and friends in high places." Derek's finger paused over the screen. "That's right. So if you know what's good for you, I also know you're the same piece of shit who raped Kimberly Hartley 14 years ago. Got away with it because daddy's money bought you a good lawyer and a better lie." The diner went silent. Even the paramedics stopped moving. Derek's face went red. That case was dismissed. She was a liar. The courts proved it. The courts proved your father could buy justice. Different thing entirely. "You want to talk about courts?" Derek's voice rose, shrill. "You spent 6 years in prison for assault, for what you did to me. You're a convicted felon Dutton, a violent criminal, and you're going to stand there and lecture me." Reaper took another step, close enough now that he could reach out and touch Derek if he wanted, close enough to see the sweat starting to bead on Derek's upper lip, close enough to smell the fear underneath the whiskey. "I did 6 years, Reaper said quietly, "and I'd do 60 more for what you did. But that was then. This is now." "So what?" Derek tried to laugh, failed. "You gonna hit me again, go back to prison, leave your pregnant wife alone while you rot in a cell?" "No." Reaper's voice was soft, calm, the kind of calm that comes before violence so absolute it doesn't need to be loud. "I'm gonna give you one chance. One. To get on your knees, apologize to my wife, and pray that our baby is okay." Derek stared at him, speechless. "You got 3 seconds to decide. 1. Are you insane?" Derek looked around, at Tyler and Bran, at Betty, at the paramedics. "Is he seriously threatening me right now?" 2. The door opened. Sheriff Garrett Blackwood walked in. 55 years old, graying hair gut hanging over a belt weighed down with badge and gun and radio. He took in the scene with practiced eyes. Sarah on the gurney, blood on the floor. Griff still sitting against the booth holding his hip. Derek standing in the middle. Reaper and 11 Iron Covenant members in a semicircle. "Well, hell," Blackwood muttered. "Somebody want to tell me what's going on here?" Derek's face lit up, relief flooding through him. "Sheriff, thank God. These men are threatening me. I want them arrested, all of them." Blackwood looked at Derek, then at Reaper. "That true, Dutton?" "My wife's on her way to the hospital because this man pushed her, while she was 8 months pregnant." "That's what's true." "That's a lie." Derek pointed at Sarah. "She came at me. I was defending myself. It was an accident." Betty Blackwood turned to the diner owner. "You see what happened?" Betty nodded to the camera in the corner. "Got it all on video, Garrett. Every second." Blackwood sighed, pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, this is Sheriff Blackwood. I need another unit at Betty's diner for witness statements." He looked at Derek. "Son, I'm going to need you to step outside with me." "What? Why, I'm the victim here. Just step outside. We're going to have a conversation." Tyler and Bran were already edging toward the door, trying to disappear. Blackwood pointed at them. "You two, stay put. I'll get to you in a minute." The paramedics lifted Sarah's gurney, started moving toward the door. Reaper moved with them, hand finding Sarah's, squeezing gently. "I'm coming with you," he said to the lead paramedic. She nodded. "You can ride in the ambulance." Sarah's eyes found his, tears cutting tracks through the blood on her face. "The baby Nate, I can feel something's wrong." "Shh, don't talk. Save your strength." He leaned down, kissed her forehead, tasted salt and copper. "I got you. I'm right here." They loaded her into the ambulance. Reaper climbed in beside her. Through the open doors, he could see the diner. Derek, standing there, phone to his ear again. No doubt calling his father. Calling the family lawyer. setting in motion the machine that would try to make this disappear like it had made Kimberly disappear. Tiny appeared in the doorway. "Boss, we're right behind you, all the way to the hospital." Reaper nodded, couldn't speak, throat too tight. The doors closed. The ambulance pulled away, siren wailing. And as they drove through the streets of Redemption toward Mercy General Hospital, Reaper held Sarah's hand and felt something crack inside him. Something that had been held together by hope and faith in second chances and the belief that maybe, just maybe, the past could stay buried. But the past never stayed buried. It just waited, gathering strength in the darkness, until the moment you were happiest, most vulnerable, most convinced you had outrun it. Then it came back, and it took everything. The waiting room at Mercy General Hospital smelled like antiseptic and desperation. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a pale, sickly glow that made living people look half dead. The chairs were plastic, bolted to the floor, designed for maximum discomfort, as if grief needed any help finding places to settle into your bones. Reaper sat in one of those chairs, elbows on his knees, head bowed, hands clasped so tight his knuckles had gone white. He hadn't moved in 40 minutes, hadn't spoken, barely breathed. Around him, arranged like sentinels, sat 11 men. Iron Covenant didn't leave their president alone. Not now, not ever, but especially not now. Tiny occupied 3 chairs, his massive frame spilling over the armrests. He stared at the wall across from him, jaw working, grinding his teeth the way he had since Fallujah, since the IED that had taken half his unit and left him with shrapnel dreams he couldn't shake. Mad dog paced. 3 steps, one way, 3 steps back, hand going to his hip where a sidearm used to ride, before he forced himself to remember where he was. Civilian world. Laws. Consequences. Preacher sat with his head bowed, lips moving in silent prayer. His weathered hands worked a set of rosary beads that had been blessed by a chaplain in the Gulf, handed to him on a ship deck, while Scud missiles screamed overhead. Those beads had been with him through 3 deployments, 2 divorces, and 1 night in Kandahar he still couldn't talk about. The others waited in their own ways. Stone cleaning his glasses, Gage checking his phone, Wrench picking at a callus on his palm, Torch, Diesel, Hammer, Knuckles, Boone. All of them silent, all of them ready. Ready for what they didn't know, but when the call came, they would answer. The double doors at the end of the hallway swung open. A woman in surgical scrubs emerged, pulling her mask down as she walked. Dr. Margaret Ashford. 52 years old, silver, streaking through dark hair, pulled back in a ponytail. She had been delivering babies and stitching trauma patients in this hospital for 26 years. She had seen everything, done everything, saved people who had no business surviving. But the look on her face as she approached the waiting room told Reaper everything he needed to know before she opened her mouth. He stood, the movement bringing all 11 brothers to their feet with him. Dr. Ashford stopped 3 feet away. Her eyes found Reaper's, held them. Professional compassion practiced until it became second nature. But underneath, genuine sorrow. "Mr. Dutton," she said quietly, "I'm very sorry." The words hit him like a sledgehammer to the sternum. He felt his knees buckle, felt Tiny's hand on his shoulder steadying him, holding him up. "Sorry," Reaper repeated, voice hollow. "Sorry for what?" Dr. Ashford took a breath. "We did everything we could. The fall caused a placental abruption. When the placenta separates from the uterine wall, that severely the baby loses oxygen. We performed an emergency C-section, but," she paused, choosing words carefully, kindly, "the baby didn't make it. I'm so sorry." The hallway tilted. Sound became distant, muffled, like Reaper was underwater. He heard someone make a noise, a wounded animal sound. Took him a moment to realize it came from his own throat. And Sarah, Tiny's voice, rough, demanding. "Mrs. Dutton is stable, physically. The head wound required 14 stitches, but there's no skull fracture, no internal bleeding. She'll recover." Dr. Ashford's eyes went back to Reaper. But emotionally, losing a child is trauma beyond measure. She's going to need support, time, counseling. Reaper couldn't process it, couldn't make the words make sense. They were going to have a daughter. Kimberly. They had painted the nursery pale yellow, had assembled the crib, had argued gently about names for middle names. Rose after Sarah's grandmother, Marie after Reaper's mother. All of it gone, erased, as if it had never existed. "Can I see her?" His voice didn't sound like his own. "Yes, she's asking for you." Dr. Ashford gestured toward the doors. "Room 247. But Mr. Dutton, you should know. She's in shock. She hasn't cried yet. That will come later." Right now, she's very quiet, very still. Don't be alarmed. Reaper nodded, started walking. His legs moved on autopilot muscle memory, carrying him when his mind couldn't. Behind him, Preacher's voice soft. Lord, grant them strength. The hallway stretched forever. White walls, numbered doors, each one hiding its own private tragedy. Room 241, 243, 245, 247. He pushed the door open. Sarah lay in the hospital bed, propped up at a 45-degree angle. White bandage wrapped around her head, stark against her blonde hair. IV in her left arm, monitors beeping softly. Her hospital gown was pale blue, too big, making her look small, fragile. Her eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. No expression, no tears, just empty. Reaper crossed to her bedside, pulled the visitor's chair close, sat down, reached for her hand. Sarah, he whispered. She blinked. Slowly, turned her head to look at him. She's gone, isn't she? Not a question, a statement of fact. Yeah. The words scraped his throat raw. Yeah, she's gone. Kimberly. Sarah's voice was flat, detached, like she was talking about someone else's life. We were going to name her Kimberly, after my sister, and now they're both dead. Sarah, both of them, both Kimberlys, gone. She turned her head back to the ceiling. Do you think that means something, Nate? Do you think God is punishing me? No. He squeezed her hand. No, baby. This isn't punishment. This is Derek Calloway being a piece of shit. This is on him. Derek knew. Sarah's eyes closed, tears finally coming. Silent, streaming down her temples into her hair. He knew about Kimberly, about what he did, and he wasn't sorry. He was proud, you know. Reaper felt something shift inside him. Something that had been locked down for 14 years. Something he had promised himself he would never let loose again, because the last time it got out, it cost him 6 years of his life. But looking at Sarah at the wreckage of their future spread across a hospital bed, he wasn't sure he could keep that promise anymore. What are you going to do? Sarah asked, eyes still closed, voice barely audible. Are you going to kill him? The question hung in the air between them. Heavy, loaded. Reaper didn't answer right away. Couldn't, because he didn't trust what would come out of his mouth. Finally, carefully, he said, What do you want me to do? Sarah opened her eyes, looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time since he had known her, since that day 7 years ago, when she had walked back into redemption looking like a ghost of the girl who had left, he saw something in her that scared him. Rage, pure, undiluted. I want him dead, Nate. Her voice was steady now, certain. I want Derek Calloway dead. I want him to suffer the way Kimberly suffered, the way our daughter suffered, the way I'm suffering right now. She sat up, gripped his hand with both of hers, strength returning. You went to prison for me once, for Kimberly. You sacrificed 6 years of your life to make him hurt, and it didn't matter. He learned nothing. He's still out there, still hurting people, still walking around like he's untouchable. Sarah, so this time don't just hurt him, end him. And I don't care what it costs. I don't care if you go back to prison. I don't care if I have to spend the rest of my life alone. I just want him gone. Reaper looked at his wife, at the mother of his dead child, at the woman he loved more than anything in this world, and he knew she meant every word. He also knew he couldn't do what she was asking. Not because he didn't want to. God knows he wanted to, had wanted to for 14 years, had dreamed about it in his cell at Florence, had imagined it in perfect detail. The sound Derek's skull would make, the look in his eyes when he realized no one was coming to save him, the silence that would come after. But he couldn't, because if he killed Derek, he would die in prison, and Sarah would be alone, truly alone. No sister, no daughter, no husband, and Derek's death wouldn't bring Kimberly back, either of them. So he did the only thing he could do. He leaned forward, kissed Sarah's forehead, and lied to her. Okay, he said softly. Okay, baby, I'll handle it. She sagged against him, relief flooding through her. Thank you. Thank you, Nate. He held her while she cried, while 14 years of grief and rage poured out of her in racking sobs that shook them both. He held her until the nurses came to sedate her, to give her something to help her sleep, to take away the pain for a little while. He held her until her breathing evened out and her grip on his hand loosened, and she drifted into medicated darkness. Then he stood, walked out of the room, back down the hallway to where his brothers waited. They looked up as he approached, reading his face, seeing the answer written there. The baby, Mad Dog asked. Gone. Preacher crossed himself. Lord have mercy. Tiny stood. All 6'5", 340 pounds of him. What do you need, boss? Reaper looked at them. His brothers, his family, the men who had stood beside him through hell and high water, who had kept Iron Covenant alive when he was locked away. Who would follow him into the fire if he asked? I need to go home, he said. I need to think. They nodded. No arguments, no questions. They rode in formation through Redemption's dark streets, past houses where families slept safe behind locked doors, past businesses shuttered for the night, past the diner where hours ago his life had made sense. They rode to the clubhouse, a low-slung building on the edge of town, corrugated metal roof, Iron Covenant MC, painted across the front in letters 3 feet high. Inside a bar, pool tables, couches salvaged from secondhand stores. Walls covered in photographs, brothers who had ridden with them, brothers who had fallen, brothers who had earned their place in the Covenant. Reaper walked to his office in the back. Small room, desk, filing cabinet. Safe built into the wall. He spun the combination. The safe door swung open. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, lay a Colt 1911. Government issue. The same sidearm he had carried in the Navy. .45 caliber. 7 rounds plus 1 in the chamber. Close range, it would punch through a car door. Through a man, through the lies Derek Calloway had built around himself. Reaper pulled it out, felt the weight, the balance, muscle memory taking over. Magazine out, checked the load magazine back in rack, the slide safety on. He set it on the desk, stared at it. Behind him, the door opened. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate. You planning on using that? Tiny's voice. Reaper didn't turn around. Haven't decided yet. Sarah wants him dead. Yeah. And you? Reaper was quiet for a long moment. Then soft. I want a lot of things, Tiny. Doesn't mean I get them. Tiny moved into the room, pulled up a chair, sat down with a grunt. You remember what you told me when I got out after Baghdad? Reaper shook his head. You said the hardest thing about coming home wasn't leaving the war behind. It was learning how to be human again, how to feel things without letting them control you, how to be strong enough to choose peace even when violence would be easier. I was full of shit. Maybe, but I listened. We all did. You built this club on those principles. No drugs, no crime, no unnecessary violence. We're better than the gangbangers who give bikers a bad name. You taught us that. Reaper picked up the gun, turned it over in his hands. And what if those principles got my daughter killed? They didn't. Derek Calloway did. Same thing. No, brother, it's not. Tiny leaned forward. You put that gun down and walk away right now, nobody would blame you. You've earned the right to vengeance, twice over. But if you pick it up and do what you're thinking about doing, you'll lose everything. And Derek will still have won. He's already won. Reaper's voice cracked. He took Kimberly. He took my daughter. He's going to walk away from this, Tiny. You know he is. His father will make it disappear. Money, lawyers, influence. Same as last time. Maybe, probably, but that's not the point. Then what is? Tiny stood, walked to the door, paused. The point is who you want to be when Sarah wakes up tomorrow. The man who kept his promise to be better. Or the man who proved Derek right. That we're just violent thugs who solve problems with fists and bullets. He left, door closing a soft behind him. Reaper sat alone in the office, gun on the desk, silence pressing in from all sides. His phone buzzed. Text message, unknown number. He opened it. A photograph. Derek Calloway, standing outside the sheriff's station, smiling, shaking hands with his father Vincent, both of them in expensive suits. Both of them looking like men who had just dodged a bullet. Below the photo, a message. Charges dropped due to insufficient evidence. Self-defense claim accepted. Have a nice life, Dutton. Oh, and sorry about your kid. Reaper stared at the screen. Read the message 3 times. Let the words sink in. Charges dropped. Self-defense. Sorry about your kid. He picked up the gun, chambered around, stood. The door opened again. This time someone unexpected. Griff Sutherland limped in. 71 years old, leaning heavy on a cane hip, clearly bothering him from where Tyler had shoved him. But his eyes were clear. Steady. Nate, he said quietly, put the gun down, son. You don't understand, Griff. Oh, I understand plenty. Griff moved to the desk, slow, painful. I understand you're hurting. I understand you want blood. I understand Derek Calloway is a cancer, and the world would be better off without him. Then why are you here? Because I also understand that what you're about to do won't bring your daughter back, won't heal Sarah, won't change anything except put you in a cage for the rest of your life. Griff sat down with a wince. And because I've been where you are. Reaper lowered the gun. Kuwait, Kuwait, Griff nodded. Operation Desert Storm, February 26, 1991. We were pushing toward Kuwait City. My unit took friendly fire from an A-10. Pilot got confused, thought we were Iraqi armor. Killed 4 of my men. Good men, my friends. He pulled out his wallet, opened it to show a faded photograph. 4 soldiers, young, smiling. I wanted to kill that pilot. Spent months trying to find out who he was, planned it out, how I'd do it. Where? When? Griff closed the wallet. Put it away. Never did find his name. And you know what, I'm glad. Because if I had, I would have done it. And I would have spent the last 33 years in Leavenworth instead of here. Instead of with my wife, my kids, my grandkids. Your friends still died. Yeah, they did. And nothing I could do would change that. But I could choose who I became after. Killer or survivor. Prisoner or free man. He looked at the gun in Reaper's hand. What are you gonna choose, Nate? Reaper set the gun down. I don't know. Yes, you do. You've always known. That's why you're still sitting here instead of already on your way to the Calloway house. Griff reached into his jacket, pulled out a manila envelope, set it on the desk. What's this? Information about Derek Calloway, about what he's been doing for the last 14 years. Griff tapped the envelope. Turns out Kimberly wasn't his only victim. I started digging after what happened today. Made some calls, talked to people, found 7 other women. 7. Reaper opened the envelope. Inside a list, names, dates. Someone who's already lost everything and has nothing left to fear. Griff met Reaper's eyes. Someone like Sarah. Reaper looked at the list again. 7 names, 7 stories, 7 chances Derek had been given to change and hadn't. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting there's a difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is you putting a bullet in Derek's head. Feels good for about 5 seconds, then you spend the rest of your life in prison. Justice is making sure everyone knows what he is, what he's done, making sure he can't hide behind his father's money anymore. The courts already failed once. That was criminal court. Different rules, different burden of proof. Griff stood, slow. But civil court civil suits don't require proof beyond reasonable doubt. Just preponderance of evidence. And with 7 women willing to testify, with Sarah willing to tell Kimberly's story with video of what happened today, he shrugged. Might not put him in prison, but it'll ruin him, financially, socially, politically. Reaper was quiet, processing. Think about it, Griff said. Talk to Sarah, talk to your brothers. But whatever you decide, decide soon. Because right now, Derek thinks he's won, thinks he's untouchable. And the longer we wait, the deeper he digs in. Griff limped to the door, paused. One more thing. That pilot who killed my friends, found out years later he ate his gun. 6 months after the incident. Couldn't live with what he'd done. He looked back at Reaper. Some men carry their guilt until it kills them. Others never feel it at all. Derek's the second kind, which means if you want him to suffer, you got to make sure he lives. Lives long enough to watch everything he has fall apart. That's real punishment. He left. Reaper sat in silence. Gun on one side of the desk, envelope on the other. 2 paths, 2 futures. He thought about Sarah, about the look in her eyes when she told him to kill Derek, about the rage and pain and desperate need for something to make sense in a world that had stopped making sense. He thought about Kimberly, both of them. One buried in Redemption Cemetery. One who never got the chance to be buried at all. He thought about Iron Covenant, about the brothers who had stood by him, about the principles he had built this club on, about whether those principles mattered when everything else had been taken. And he thought about who he wanted to be, the man with the gun, or the man with the envelope. Outside, dawn was breaking, pale light creeping through the window. A new day, whether better or worse he didn't know yet. Reaper picked up his phone, started making calls, not to Derek, not to Vincent, to the names on the list, to women who had been hurt and silenced and paid off and forgotten, to survivors who thought they were alone. One by one he dialed. One by one he introduced himself. One by one he asked the same question. Are you ready to fight back? And one by one, slowly, carefully, they said yes. By the time the sun was fully up, Reaper had made 7 calls, had 7 commitments, had the beginning of something that might be justice. He looked at the gun one more time, then picked it up, unloaded it, wrapped it back in oiled cloth, and put it back in the safe. Some wars were fought with bullets. This one would be fought with truth. And when it was over, Derek Calloway would wish Reaper had just shot him. Because death was quick. But this would last forever. 3 days after losing their daughter, Sarah came home from the hospital. Reaper drove slow through Redemption streets, hyper-aware of every bump, every pothole, every imperfection in the road. Sarah sat in the passenger seat of his truck, a Ford F-150 he'd bought 10 years ago, and maintained with the same meticulous care he gave his Harley. She stared out the window, hands folded in her lap bandage still wrapped around her head. The doctors had wanted to keep her longer, run more tests, monitor her recovery. But Sarah had insisted. She needed to be home, needed to be anywhere but a hospital room that smelled like death and disinfectant. The house was small, 2-bedroom ranch on the outskirts of town surrounded by scrub brush and desert sand. They had bought it together 3 years ago, their first real home, the place where they were going to raise their daughter. The nursery door was closed when they walked in. Neither of them looked at it. Reaper helped Sarah to the couch, got her settled with pillows, a blanket, water within reach. She moved like someone who had aged 40 years overnight. Slow, careful, fragile. "You need anything?" he asked. She shook her head, didn't speak. He stood there, useless, wanting to fix something that couldn't be fixed. Finally, he said, "I made some calls. While you were in the hospital, about Derek." Her eyes flickered to him. First real sign of life he'd seen in 3 days. "What kind of calls?" "The women on Griff's list, 7 of them, all victims of Derek. All paid off to stay quiet." Reaper sat down next to her, close but not touching, giving her space. "I talked to each one, told them about Kimberly, about what happened to you, about the baby." Sarah's hand went to her stomach, the emptiness there. "What did they say?" "Most of them cried. All of them were angry. And every single one said they'd testify if we could protect them from the Callaways." "Can we?" "I don't know, but I'm going to try." He reached for her hand. She let him take it. "This isn't the revenge you wanted. I know that. But it's something. It's a fight we might actually win." Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then soft, "Tell me about them, the women." So he did. One by one, he went through the list. Mackenzie O'Brien worked as a bartender in Denver now. Single mother of 2. Derek had cornered her at a party in 2014, dragged her into a bathroom, left her bleeding and broken. The Callaways had paid her $50,000. She'd used it to move away, start over. But the nightmares never stopped. Harper Flynn was a nurse in Phoenix, engaged to be married when Derek raped her in 2016. Her fiancé left after. Couldn't handle her trauma, her anger, her middle-of-the-night panic attacks. She lived alone now, worked night shifts, avoided men. Avery Caldwell had been a law student at Arizona State, top of her class, full scholarship, future Supreme Court justice, her professors said. Derek attacked her at a study group in 2019. She dropped out 3 months later, worked retail now. All that promise buried under shame and PTSD. Riley Donovan was 24, youngest on the list. Derek had assaulted her just 3 years ago at a club in Tucson. She tried to press charges. The Callaway lawyers had threatened to destroy her family, expose her father's tax issues, ruin her mother's nursing career. Riley had backed down, signed the NDA, took the money, and tried to forget. Quinn Fitzgerald, Sloan Patterson, Tegan Murphy. Each with her own story, each with her own scars, each convinced she was alone until Reaper's call. When he finished, Sarah was crying, silent tears tracking down her face. 14 years, she whispered. He's been doing this for 14 years, since Kimberly, maybe before. Yeah, and we're going to stop him. We're going to try. Sarah stood, slow, determined, walked to the fireplace mantel, picked up a framed photograph, Kimberly Hartley at 16, cheerleader uniform, bright smile, eyes full of future. "I want to meet them," Sarah said. "The women, I want to look them in the eye and tell them they're not alone, that we're going to fight, together." Reaper stood, crossed to her, put his arms around her from behind, felt her lean into him. "Okay," he said, "I'll set it up." The next day they began gathering an army, not an army of soldiers, an army of survivors. Griff offered his house for the first meeting. Large living room, enough space for everyone, neutral ground, private. They came one at a time over the course of a week. Each woman making the drive to redemption, scared, uncertain, but willing to listen. Mackenzie arrived first. 31 but looking older, red hair, pulled back eyes that had seen too much. She walked into Griff's living room like she was entering a combat zone, defensive, ready to bolt. Sarah met her at the door. Two women who had never known each other but shared the same wound. They looked at each other for a long moment. Then Sarah opened her arms. Mackenzie hesitated, then stepped forward, collapsed into the embrace, sobbed like a child. "I thought I was the only one," Mackenzie choked out. "I thought it was just me." "No," Sarah whispered. "You were never alone." Harper came next, then Avery, then the others. Each meeting following the same pattern. Fear giving way to recognition, giving way to tears, giving way to something harder, something stronger. Rage with purpose. By the end of the week, all 8 women sat in Griff's living room. Sarah and the 7 from the list. Around them, forming a protective circle, stood the Iron Covenant. 12 men in leather and denim, silent witnesses to pain they couldn't fix, but could damn sure avenge. Reaper stood at the front of the room, looked at the faces staring back at him. Women who had been broken and were choosing to stand anyway. "I'm not going to lie to you," he said. "This is going to be hard. The Callaways have money power lawyers. They're going to attack you, call you liars, drag your names through the mud, make you wish you'd stayed silent." No one moved, no one spoke. But Reaper continued, "They can't hide anymore. Not from all of you. Not when you stand together. Derek thinks he's untouchable. His father thinks he can buy his way out of anything. We're going to prove them wrong." "How?" Quinn asked. Youngest voice, most fragile. "We tried the criminal justice system. It failed. We're not going criminal this time. We're going civil." Reaper pulled out a folder. Inside, documents prepared by a lawyer in Phoenix. Pro bono work from someone who had heard the story and wanted to help. Civil lawsuit, all 8 of you as plaintiffs, suing Derek for damages, pain and suffering, loss of income, medical expenses, every penny he's cost you. "He'll just pay and walk away," Sloan said bitterly. "Like always. Maybe, but this time it's public record. This time the media will cover it. This time everyone in Arizona will know what he is." Tegan leaned forward. "And if we lose," Reaper met her eyes, "then we lose. But at least we fought. At least we stood up. At least we made sure Kimberly's death meant something." Sarah stood, moved to the center of the room. "My sister died thinking she was alone, thinking no one believed her. I won't let that happen to our daughter." Her hand went to her stomach again. That unconscious gesture to the life that wasn't there anymore. "I'm testifying. I'm telling Kimberly's story. I'm telling what Derek did 3 days ago, and I don't care what it cost me." One by one, the women nodded, agreement spreading through the room like fire catching. They were doing this, but the Callaways weren't going to make it easy. 2 nights later, redemption cycles burned. Reaper's garage, his livelihood, the business he had built from nothing after getting out of prison. 20 years of sweat and grease and honest work. Someone had doused it in gasoline, lit a match, let it burn. By the time the fire department arrived, there was nothing left but twisted metal and ash. Reaper stood in the parking lot at 3 in the morning, watching smoke curl into the night sky. Behind him, Iron Covenant had assembled, every member. Bikes lined up, waiting for orders. The message was clear. Back off or lose more. Tiny stepped up beside him. "We know who did this." "Yeah." "Say the word boss. We'll handle it." Reaper was quiet, watching his livelihood smolder, thinking about the easy path, the violent path, the path that ended with Derek Calloway in the ground and Reaper back in prison. Then he thought about Sarah, about 7 women who were counting on him to be better than Derek, to prove that strength wasn't just about fists and bullets. "No," Reaper said. "We stick to the plan. They burned your garage. I know, and we're going to make them pay for it, just not the way they expect." Mad Dog moved forward. "Boss, with all due respect, at some point we gotta stop turning the other cheek. They're not going to quit. They're going to keep coming until we're all buried." "Let them come." Reaper turned to face his brothers. 11 faces looking back at him. Loyal, ready, willing to ride into hell if he asked. Every move they make just proves what they are. Bullies, cowards, men who can't win unless they cheat. "And us," Wrench asked. "We're better than that. We've always been better than that." Reaper looked back at the smoking ruins of his garage. "They think this breaks me. They're wrong. This just makes me more determined." Sheriff Blackwood pulled up in his cruiser, got out, surveyed the damage, shook his head. Jesus, Dutton, you pissed someone off. You could say that. You got enemies with gasoline and matches. I got enemies with everything, Sheriff. But I also got witnesses who'll testify that I was home all night with my wife. 11 witnesses, in fact, who were at my house for a meeting that went until 2 a.m. Blackwood sighed. This about Derek Calloway. You tell me. Nate, I know what happened at Betty's was wrong. I know Sarah lost the baby. I know you got every right to be angry, but going to war with the Callaways isn't going to end well for you. I'm not going to war. I'm going to court. Blackwood blinked. Court, civil suit, 8 plaintiffs, all with similar stories about Derek, all willing to testify. Reaper pulled out his phone. Showed the sheriff the court filing. Official, legal, filed 2 days ago. We're doing this the right way. Blackwood read the document. Looked up. Something like respect in his eyes. You know they're going to come after you hard. They already are, hence my garage being a pile of ash. You got proof it was them. Not yet, but I will. Blackwood handed the phone back. For what it's worth, Dutton, I hope you win. Derek Calloway is a cancer on this town. Has been for years. But his father's got reach. Friends in Phoenix, friends in Washington. This isn't going to be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. The sheriff left. Fire trucks packed up. Iron Covenant lingered. Preacher stepped forward, put a hand on Reaper's shoulder. We'll rebuild it, brother, all of us. Garage will be better than before. Appreciate it. In the meantime, you need money, you got it. We all chip in. That's what family does. Reaper looked at his brothers, at men who had stuck by him through prison, through poverty, through every dark moment of the last 2 decades. Thanks, but right now I need something more than money. Name it. I need you to help me find proof. Whoever burned my garage left evidence. Always do. We find it, we give it to the sheriff, we add arson to the civil suit. Tiny grinned. Shark smile. Now you're talking our language. They spread out, searching the perimeter, looking for anything the arsonist might have left behind. Footprints, tire tracks, discarded gas cans. It was Wrench who found it. 20 yards from the garage, half buried in sand. A gas can, red plastic, still reeking of fumes. And on the bottom, written in black, Sharpie a name. T. Kern, Tyler Kern, Derek's friend, the one who'd been with him at Betty's, the one who'd shoved Griff. Wrench held it up. Boss, we got him. Reaper pulled out his phone, took photographs, close-ups of the name, of the can, of exactly where they found it. Evidence. The next morning, he delivered it to Sheriff Blackwood. The morning after that, Tyler Kern was arrested for arson, and the Calloway empire started to crack. News of the arrest spread fast. Small town like Redemption, everyone knew everyone's business. Within hours, the whole county knew that Derek Calloway's best friend had been arrested for burning down Reaper's garage. The civil lawsuit was already generating attention. Local news had picked it up. 8 women suing the son of a prominent politician. The story had legs, but the arson added fuel, literally and figuratively. About a suicide note that still haunted him 14 years later. He told her about his own arrest, his conviction, 6 years in Florence State Prison for nearly beating Derek to death. He didn't sugarcoat it, didn't make himself the hero, just stated facts. He told her about Sarah, about meeting her again when she came back to Redemption, about falling in love with a woman who carried scars that would never fully heal, about building something good from the ashes of something terrible. And he told her about 3 days ago, about Derek walking into Betty's diner, about the attack, about Sarah losing their daughter. By the time he finished, Delaney had stopped writing. Just sat there, recorder running tears in her eyes. Jesus, she whispered. That's just my story, Reaper said. You want the real nightmare talk to the other 7 women? They'll tell you this has been Derek's pattern for over a decade. Hunt, attack, pay off, repeat. And Vincent Calloway knew had to. You don't pay out hundreds of thousands in settlements without Daddy signing the checks? Delaney's jaw tightened. I'm going to destroy them. Just tell the truth. Truth will do the job. She published the first article 2 days later, front page of the Sunday edition. Above the fold, photograph of Derek and Vincent at a campaign rally, all smiles and American flags. Headline, Senate candidate's son accused of serial sexual assault. The article was devastating, detailed, names of victims who had agreed to go public, quotes from Sarah about Kimberly, timelines showing 14 years of allegations, payoffs, and cover-ups. Within hours, it was viral. Twitter exploded. Hashtag Justice for Kimberly trending nationally. News outlets across Arizona picked up the story. Then California, then Nevada, then national. Vincent Calloway's campaign went into damage control. Press releases, denials, threats of lawsuits for defamation. But the damage was done, and it was about to get worse. The civil trial was set for 3 weeks out. County Courthouse, Judge Patricia Brennan presiding. 59 years old reputation for being tough but fair. She'd been a prosecutor before becoming a judge, had seen every dirty trick in the book, didn't tolerate bullshit from either side. The Callaways hired Gerald Whitmore, same lawyer who'd gotten Derek off 14 years ago, $600 an hour, win rate of 92%. The kind of man who could convince a jury that water wasn't wet if you paid him enough. The plaintiffs had Marcus Webb, Phoenix lawyer who specialized in sex abuse cases, worked mostly pro bono. Balding, soft-spoken, looked like a high school math teacher. But in a courtroom, he was the assassin. The day of the trial, redemption turned out in force. Courthouse steps packed with people. Supporters of the victims holding signs. Justice for Kimberly, believe survivors. End rape culture. On the other side, Vincent Calloway's campaign staff. Smaller group, quieter, but well-dressed, well-funded, ready for war. Iron Covenant formed a human wall at the base of the steps. 12 men in leather cuts arms crossed silent. Not threatening, just present. Witnesses. Sarah walked up those steps flanked by 7 women. 8 survivors moving together. Each one terrified, each one determined. Reaper walked beside Sarah, hand on her back, steady presence. Inside the courtroom was packed, every seat filled, overflow in the hallway. Media cameras lined up outside, banned from filming inside, but ready to pounce the moment anyone emerged. Judge Brennan called the court to order. We're here today for the civil case of O'Brien et al. Versus Derek Calloway. This is a bench trial, no jury. I'll hear testimony from both sides, review evidence, and render judgment. She looked at both tables. Counsel, are you ready? Yes, Your Honor. Marcus Webb stood, calm, confident. Ready, Your Honor. Gerald Whitmore, expensive suit, shark smile. Then let's begin. The trial lasted 3 days. Whitmore went first. Opened with character assassination disguised as defense. Painted Derek as a victim of vindictive women seeking money. Painted the plaintiffs as opportunists capitalizing on the Me Too movement. Painted Reaper as a violent ex-con with an axe to grind. But Webb was ready. He called Mackenzie to the stand. She walked up trembling and told her story. Every horrible detail. What Derek had done. How it felt. How it changed her. Whitmore cross-examined. Tried to poke holes. Miss O'Brien, you accepted $50,000 from the Calloway family, correct? Yes. And you signed a non-disclosure agreement? Yes. So you took their money and promised not to talk. But here you are talking. Sounds like you just want another payday. Mackenzie's voice was steady. I took that money because I was scared. Because I had 2 kids to feed and bills to pay, and lawyers told me I'd never win in court. But keeping silent didn't make the pain stop. It just meant Derek got to keep hurting people. Objection, speculation. Sustain. Miss O'Brien, stick to your own experience. My own experience is that I wish I'd spoken up sooner. Maybe if I had Sarah Dutton's daughter would still be alive. The courtroom went silent. One by one, the women testified. Harper, Avery, Riley, Quinn, Sloan, Tegan. Each with her own story, each corroborating the same pattern. Derek sat at the defense table, face impassive. But Reaper saw it, the tiny crack in his armor, the flicker of fear. On day 3, Sarah took the stand. She wore a simple black dress, hair pulled back, bandage finally removed, but the scar on her temple still visible. She placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, sat down. Marcus Webb approached gently. Mrs. Dutton, thank you for being here. I know this is difficult. Sarah nodded. Can you tell the court about your sister, Kimberly Hartley? And Sarah did. She told the story Reaper had heard 100 times but never got easier. Told about Kimberly, the cheerleader, the straight-A student, the girl who was going to change the world. Told about the rape, the trial, the acquittal, the suicide. She told about finding Kimberly's body, about the note, about 14 years of wondering if she could have done something different, said something different, been there more. Then she told about coming back to redemption, about meeting Reaper, about choosing to build a life in the place where her sister had died because running away hadn't healed anything. She told about getting pregnant, about naming the baby Kimberly, about hope blooming for the first time in over a decade. And she told about Derek walking into Betty's diner, about recognizing her, about taunting her with Kimberly's memory, about the push, the fall, the blood, Mrs. Dutton, Webb said softly. What happened after you fell? I woke up in the hospital. They told me my baby was dead. Sarah's voice cracked. First time all testimony? They told me Kimberly was gone. And how did that make you feel? Like dying. Like the universe was punishing me. Like no matter what I did, Derek Calloway would always win. Webb paused. Let the words sink in. Then, Mrs. Dutton, why are you here today? Sarah looked at Derek. Really looked at him. He stared back emotionless. I'm here because my sister deserved better. My daughter deserved better. And every woman Derek has hurt deserves to be believed. She turned to Judge Brennan. I'm not asking for money, Your Honor. I'm asking for acknowledgement. I'm asking the court to say that what happened to us was real, that Derek Calloway is guilty, that we're not liars or opportunists or vindictive exes. We're survivors, and we deserve justice. Whitmore's cross-examination was brutal. I'm a man who protects his family. There's a difference. Webb pulled out a phone. Mr. Dutton, 3 weeks ago you received a text message. Can you tell the court about it? Reaper described it. The photo of Derek and Vincent celebrating. The message mocking his daughter's death. And do you still have this message? Yes. May I see it? Reaper handed over his phone. Webb connected it to the courtroom display. The message appeared on a screen for everyone to see. Charges dropped. Self-defense. Sorry about your kid. The courtroom erupted. Judge Brennan banged her gavel. Order, order, in this court. But the damage to Derek was catastrophic. That message displayed for everyone to see showed exactly who he was. No remorse, no empathy, just cruel mockery. Whitmore tried to recover. Your Honor, we have no way to verify this message actually came from my client. Webb smiled. Actually, Your Honor, we subpoenaed Mr. Calloway's phone records. The number matches. This message was sent from Derek Calloway's personal cell phone at 9:42 p.m. on the night Sarah Dutton miscarried. Derek's face went white. Vincent Calloway stood up in the gallery. This is a setup my son would never. Mr. Calloway, sit down or I'll have you removed. Judge Brennan's voice cut like glass. Vincent sat. The trial concluded 2 hours later. Closing arguments. Webb spoke of patterns of evidence of 8 women who all told the same story. Whitmore spoke of reasonable doubt of ulterior motives of the sanctity of innocent until proven guilty. Judge Brennan took it all in, made notes, finally looked up. I'll render my decision in 1 week. Court is adjourned. That week was the longest of Reaper's life. He and Sarah stayed home mostly, avoided the media circus, avoided the speculation, just held each other and waited. Iron Covenant kept watch, rotating shifts at the house, making sure no one bothered them. No reporters, no Calloway goons. Just peace. On the 7th day, Judge Brennan called them back to court. Same packed courtroom, same tension, same 8 women sitting together holding hands. Judge Brennan entered. Everyone stood. Sat when she did. I've reviewed all testimony and evidence, she began. This case was difficult, not because the facts were unclear, but because the pattern was so obvious and so disturbing. She looked at Derek. Mr. Calloway, I find you liable for sexual assault battery and intentional infliction of emotional distress against all 8 plaintiffs. The preponderance of evidence supports their claims. Your pattern of behavior, combined with the text message mocking Sarah Dutton's loss, demonstrates not only guilt, but callous disregard for human suffering. Derek stood. Your Honor, this is... Sit down, Mr. Calloway. I'm not finished. He sat. Damages. This court awards the following: Mackenzie O'Brien, $1.2 million. Harper Flynn, $1.5 million. Avery Caldwell, $1.8 million. Riley Donovan, $1 million. Quinn Fitzgerald, $1.3 million. Sloan Patterson, $1.1 million. Tegan Murphy, $1.2 million. She paused. And to Sarah Dutton for the loss of her unborn child and the trauma inflicted, $3.5 million. The total, $12.6 million. The courtroom exploded. Cheers, crying, reporters rushing for the doors. Vincent Calloway's face was purple with rage. Derek sat in shock, unable to process. Whitmore was already on his feet. Your Honor, we intend to appeal. You're welcome to try, Mr. Whitmore, but this judgment stands pending that appeal. Judge Brennan banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. Sarah collapsed into Reaper's arms, sobbing, not from sadness, from release, from the weight of 14 years finally lifting. Outside, the courthouse steps became a celebration. 8 women surrounded by supporters, by Iron Covenant, by a community that had finally chosen to believe them. Delaney Walsh was their camera crew in tow. Mrs. Dutton, how does it feel? Sarah wiped her eyes, looked at the camera. It feels like Kimberly can finally rest. Both of them. The fallout was swift and total. Within days, the audio recording that had sealed the case leaked to the press. Derek drunk at a bar 3 weeks before trial, bragging to friends. I've done at least 10 girls. Nobody can touch me. Dad's the king of this town. The recording went viral. Vincent Calloway's Senate campaign imploded. Donors pulled out, endorsements withdrawn. Within a week, he dropped out of the race. FBI opened an investigation into the Calloway family finances. Pattern of paying off assault victims. Potential RICO charges. Derek fled, tried to run to Mexico, got picked up at the border, extradited back for questioning. And Tyler Kern, facing arson charges and looking at serious prison time, flipped. Testified that Derek had ordered the garage burned, that Vincent had known about all the assaults, that the Calloway family had operated as a criminal enterprise for over a decade. The arrest came 6 months after the civil trial verdict. Derek Calloway, 28 years federal prison, multiple counts of sexual assault, witness intimidation, conspiracy. Vincent Calloway, 15 years, obstruction of justice, racketeering, bribery, Gerald Whitmore disbarred, under investigation for his role in covering up crimes, and in redemption, life slowly rebuilt itself. Reaper's garage rose from the ashes. Iron Covenant members donated time, materials, labor. Community pitched in. 6 months after the fire, redemption cycles reopened. Bigger than before, better. Sarah started a support group for sexual assault survivors, met weekly at the library, gave women a place to speak, to heal, to know they weren't alone. The 8 plaintiffs stayed in touch, became friends, became sisters in a way only shared trauma could forge. And on a cool November morning, 1 year after losing their daughter, Reaper and Sarah stood in Redemption Cemetery. 2 headstones, side by side. Kimberly Hartley, 1996 to 2012. Forever young Kimberly Dutton, 2026, forever in our hearts. Sarah placed flowers on both graves, knelt, touched the cold stone. I did it, Kim, she whispered. We did it. He can't hurt anyone else. Reaper stood behind her, hand on her shoulder. 11 brothers arranged in a semicircle, paying respects, bearing witness. When Sarah stood, there were tears on her face, but also something else. Peace. Not the absence of pain. That would never fully go away, but the presence of closure, of justice, of knowing they had fought and won. They walked back to the truck together, Reaper's arm around Sarah's waist. What now, she asked. Now we live, we heal, we keep fighting for people who need it. Like we needed it. Like we needed it. They drove home through Redemption streets, past Betty's Diner still serving coffee and comfort, past the courthouse where truth had finally won, past the garage where Reaper would spend tomorrow teaching a kid from a broken home how to rebuild an engine, past all the places where pain had lived and hope was being rebuilt. That night, as Reaper lay in bed with Sarah curled against him, his phone buzzed. Text message, unknown number. He opened it. A message from a girl. 17, photo attached, bruised face, black eye. Mr. Dutton, my name is Fallon. I need help. There's this guy at my school. Reaper read it twice. Looked at Sarah asleep against his chest. Thought about Kimberly, about his daughter, about 8 women who had stood up when it mattered most. He texted back. Tell me everything. You're not alone. We'll fight this together. Because that's what Iron Covenant meant. That's what Brotherhood meant. That's what justice meant. Not just winning once, but standing ready to fight every single time someone needed defending. For as long as there was breath in his body and brothers at his back. Forever. Underscore, 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 underscore. The end.